Welcome. I'm Kyle Draper, the Communications Supervisor for the Bedford Regional Water Authority, and welcome to our very first podcast. We're here today with Brian Key, our Executive Director, and a podcast is something we've thought about and kicked around for the last few years. And it was something that we just finally decided we were going to do. We haven't committed to doing it on a regular basis moving forward, but we wanted to give it a try today. If this is something that you like, please comment in the comments in whatever channel we're on and let us know, and we might do this again in the future. But the reason we finally decided to do it today was because we've had a lot of stuff going on that Brian had shared with our team, and we just thought it would be a great idea for him to share it with the public as well. So Brian, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us something about yourself.
So I have been with the authority about 25 years now.
Wow.
Started in 2020. 2000, year 2000, and hitting my 25th year now. So it's been a lot of changes at the authority in 25 years.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You've been with the authority, quote, longer than there's been an authority, correct?
With the Regional Water Authority, that's correct. I was with the Public Service Authority, which is a county entity, starting in 2000. And then in 2013 is when we merged with the city utilities and became the Bedford Regional Water Authority.
So I'm sure you've seen a lot of changes in the water industry in that amount of time, not just with the authority, but just in general.
Yeah, absolutely. Consumer confidence reports weren't required when I started back in 2000.
Wow, you bring up something I'm very familiar with. But anyway, and in fact, that's a great plug. We've got that out now. It just came out in June. So if anybody would like to check it out on our website, please check it out. We put a lot of work into producing it, and it's kind of good for folks to know the quality of their water and all the things we go to ensure that quality.
And a lot of the statistics about the authority are in there as well. It's not just about the quality of the water, but a little bit about us.
And we were talking about the history. That's some of the history is included in there. Tell us something about it, on how it was formed, 12, 13 years ago that it was formed, and kind of a little bit of the history of it.
So the city was going through a reversion process, and as they were studying that, they determined that they wanted the utilities to go to a third party. And so the Public Service Authority, being the county, worked with the city and just decided we'd take the best of both worlds and put them together. So all of the staff that were at our water treatment plant and wastewater treatment plant in town became part of the Regional Water Authority, and all the folks in the county and the administrative staff, accountants and information systems folks, engineering, all of them came in administratively. So we just blended the best of both worlds together.
Awesome. Well, I know I just completed my first budget season with the authority since I came on board, and I know it's a very intense process because we treat the money that we were allocated like it's our own, and I know you've got a plaque on your desk that says Ebenezer, and to how seriously you take that role of spending money. And so I know everybody this time of year, that's what's on everybody's mind are rates. Mm-hmm. And so I wanted you to kind of give you an opportunity to talk about that and what goes behind setting those rates and the whole process.
Okay. So rates are a challenge for any entity, any authority in particular, because you want to make sure that you're giving the best value you can to the customers. And we do that all the time. We are very frugal with how we spend the money that we collect from our customers. That said, things are getting more expensive. Things are starting to age or continuing to age. And our system, particularly in the town, is old. Even in the county, we've got some systems that are 1970 circa. Most of the forest areas, 1990 circa. So it's aging. It needs to be planned for replacement, and the replacement of pipes is very expensive. So as much as we want to, we're going to hold the rates as close as we can to being inexpensive, but there's a lot that needs to be done, and it takes money to get that done. So I do foresee in the future that we're going to have to continue to adjust our rates because we have a lot of work to do. And by a lot, we've roughly put together, there's about $600 million worth of pipe that needs to be replaced that's at or exceeding the 50-year mark in age. And that's when the industry deems that as being fully depreciated.
Oh wow, and that explains it. Like some localities, they'll say, our goal is to replace 2% of the pipes in our system, and it sounds really cool on an annual basis. But then when you think about it, that is that 50-year that you're talking about. And one of the things that I didn't even think about before I went to work for the authority or the BRWA was how much you don't even think about it. That you turn on a tap, you get your water, you turn on the shower, you get your water. But not till I came to work here did I think we've got all these pipes underground, and the ground is very dynamic. We don't think about it as such, but speak to that with your engineering background, all the changes that all the stresses that are on the pipes.
Well, so not only do you have challenges because the pipe age is older and then it starts to get brittle and it might crack, you also have issues of just like broadband right now. There's broadband being placed all throughout the county, and you've got all these crews that are digging, and they're routinely hitting the lines. They're trying to avoid them, but at the end of the day, every time you break a piece of pipe and put a repair clamp on that, it makes that pipe depreciate even faster. It makes it age quicker, and it needs to then be looked at one of the ways we identify where we're going to replace it is in our geographic information system. We put a dot every time we've had a pipe repair. And once those dots start to become like a heat map, it starts to get into a large zone. You realize that pipe has repair clamp after repair clamp after repair clamp, and eventually just needs to be replaced. And we're reaching that point quickly in the town as we continue to replace or repair one section after another, until you've got so many repair clamps, you just can't do it anymore. You have to replace it. We also have a capital improvement program where when we find those pipes, we put them in a long-term replacement schedule. And there's a 5-year plan, and there's the past 5-year plan. And you try to line up that you're able to replace the pipe before it has a catastrophic failure that then causes service disruptions. And that's what we don't want. We don't want our customers to be without water. We don't want them to have any problems where the wastewater doesn't flow freely into the wastewater treatment plant. So being proactive is the trick.
Yeah, this week I was out taking pictures of one of our crews, and I was so impressed with them because when they finally found a lot of people think once they see water on the surface, it's going to be really easy to find the cause of the leak. And these guys had excavated probably 20 feet before they found it. When they did find it, they found one of those clamps where they had done the thing. They realized the line was galvanized, and they said, okay, while we're in here, we've got it excavated. Let's just go ahead and replace all 21 feet of line that was there. And so I don't think the people realize just how proactive we are at trying to get ahead of the break. And of course, with contractors, there's not a lot we can do with that, but we do try our best to try to stay ahead of it. And thanks for speaking to that.
Sure.
You mentioned our capital improvement project, our program. I know, let's see, July 16th and 10 a.m., we've got a ribbon cutting coming up at the Helm Street water tank. Mm-hmm. You want to speak to that project?
Sure. So that's a great example of a very expensive project that doesn't add any customers. It doesn't add any additional capacity or any additional pressure in the system. The Helm Street tank there are 2 tanks on that site, and both tanks are 1950 circa tanks, and they're way past their expected life. One of the tanks had a catastrophic paint failure, a catastrophic coating failure. And when that happened, we started looking at just painting the tank or just replacing the roof that had some rust on it. And the cost of doing that was more than the cost of replacing the entire tank, which is hard to believe, but it's a lot harder to fix a tank than it is to replace it. So the prices kept escalating, and we got to a point where we weren't sure how we were going to do the project. And then COVID hit. And with COVID, there was some funding opportunities like the American Rescue Plan Act, the ARPA process. And the town of Bedford graciously allocated some of their ARPA funds to help with the replacement of that tank. So $3.4 million later, the tank's almost done. The entire project was paid for with a combination of some reserves that we had and the ARPA funds that were allocated by the town of Bedford. And we've got a brand new tank to show off and to enjoy using come the middle of next month.
Well, I know a couple things about that project that's kind of interesting. When we do have the ribbon cutting at 10 a.m. on the 16th, people will actually be able to take a look inside the tank before it has water in it, which is kind of an unusual opportunity for people. So we invite people to come out and do that. Also, I think it's kind of cool because that tank sits on the footprint of what was the town's water treatment facility many, many years ago. Is that correct?
So the plant that's on Turkey Mountain right now was built in 1971.
Okay.
And prior to that, there was a small version of the plant on the Helm Street tank site. In fact, the square tank that's there, I mentioned there's two on the site. The square tank that was there was part of the process tank, a clear well to hold the chlorine for the old treatment plant. So when they moved the plant up onto Turkey Mountain in 71, they left the old tank and turned it into a distribution tank, a storage tank instead. But the old footprint's still there. The old concrete structure, the structure's gone, but the footprint of the foundation is still there. There's some interesting history in the town.
Yes, and that's one of the things I think a lot of people take for granted. A lot of the stuff that we do, I know we've talked about the reverse flow, that people have probably heard about that in the news a lot lately, but a lot of the stuff that we do for an area the size of Bedford is pretty cutting edge. And so I think, but it's kind of cool because like it's not even new anymore. It's 8 years old. The water treatment facility at Smith Mountain Lake, it's built on the site of an old prison. So it's kind of like as we're moving this technology forward, we're kind of giving a nod to the history, and we try to honor that as much as we can. Anything you'd like to say to that?
Well, just that we are trying to add newer technology, higher technology, better processes when we're doing anything for a renovation or anything for new builds, because the higher tech treatment plant like at Smith Mountain Lake, it requires less operators to run, and so it becomes more cost effective to treat water there than it does at the older plants. So not only do we get a higher level of treatment, a better quality of treatment, we also get that for a lower cost. And so we want to maximize that as much as possible, again, to use our customers' money as wisely as we possibly can.
Now, you mentioned Turkey Mountain. Mm-hmm. I think that's a site of another current CIP program or capital improvement. We've got a booster station up there. I was just talking to some of our operators this week. They're getting excited. It's probably within a couple of months of bringing it online and live. You want to speak to that one?
Sure. The Turkey Mountain Booster Station is really a sub-project to the Smith Mountain Lake project. And the reason is because when the city operated the system in the past, they had one source for all intents and purposes, the reservoir, and they had one treatment plant. And so you could never take that plant offline, because if you did, there wouldn't be any water in the town or in the city. So when we brought the line up from Smith Mountain Lake and then also interconnected it to Forest, we now have 3 different treatment systems interconnected to serve those 3 different service areas. So any one of those sources can now provide service to not only the service area that the source is near, like in Forest from Lynchburg, or Smith Mountain Lake treating at the lake, we can now distribute that water in other ways. So if we want to disconnect or turn off the central water treatment plant on Turkey Mountain, we can do that now and bring the water from Smith Mountain Lake or bring it in from Forest. But we can't do that and still keep the folks that are around Turkey Mountain with pressure. So we recognize we want to be able to turn that plant off for preventative maintenance, for repair work. And the way to do that is have a booster station there that provides the pressure that's needed while that plant's offline. Okay. So we're constantly trying to improve the level of service to our customers and ensure redundancy. And that's a key component to providing that redundancy for the folks that are around Turkey Mountain.
Perfect. I know the only other project that I'm aware of just is Ivy Creek. I've been out there to take some pictures of that. You want to speak to that one? Because that has been a huge undertaking for us.
It's a big project. So that's a roughly $14 million sewer line that allows us to take a pump station, a lift station for sewer offline. The lift station, to run that system, not only do we have to maintain the pumps on a regular basis, we also have to pay a pretty high energy cost in order to pump the sewage from the Forest area up into Lynchburg. This Ivy Creek sewer line will allow us to have that sewage flow by gravity through open pipes all the way into the city of Lynchburg for treatment. So not only will we have an increased capacity, there's not the restriction of the limitations on the pumps, but we also have a lower cost of operating because we're not having to pay for the electricity or the chemicals that we're having to inject there at Lake Vista in order to transmit that sewage to Lynchburg. So it's just a win-win project. There's a price tag to go with that, but long term, it's going to be more cost effective to do that than it would have been to upgrade that station and continue to pump.
Okay. Are there any other capital improvement projects that we've got going right now other than those three? I know those are the big ones.
So those are the debt service funded projects that we went and got a loan for, or grant, as was the case with Helm Street. We have a number of smaller projects that are part of our CIP that every year we're putting money into the replacement of our system. Near Shady Knoll in town, the street Shady Knoll, we're replacing a sewer line that, again, is 70 plus years old. And there were problems there that were causing blockages and backups, and the pipe was literally just caving in. And so we're always looking to identify the assets that are past the point of failure and start with the replacement there. So Shady Knoll Sewer is one that we're doing with our own crews. We have our own capital improvement crew that just goes from one project to the next on replacing. We recently did Avenel in town. We replaced the water line on Avenel where it was also small diameter. The customers were having problems with reliable service and the volume of service they could get through that line, so we replaced that. And we've done a handful of projects around town that have been replacing the existing lines, and all of that fits into our capital improvement project as well.
All right. Well, another project that the communications team is part of that I'd like you to talk about is the lead service line inventory that we're participating in right now. I know folks may remember back about 10, 15 years ago when there was a water crisis up in Flint, Michigan, and I think that's what kind of kicked all of this off. So you want to kind of explain what we're trying to do there?
So the EPA identified lead as being a problem back in the 70s, really, and there was a ban put in place of the manufacture of new parts so that you couldn't buy the fittings that would have the lead in them, and you couldn't buy the lead-based paint anymore. But recently, there's been a push to get some of the lead out that's already in the system. And the past processes have been focused on the locality or the authorities to remove what's in their system, the public side of the system. But recently, there was a big push from the EPA to not just study what's on the public side, but also what's on the private side, what's on the lines that lead to the house, what's inside the house even, and to try to remove the lead across the board, not just one side of the meter, but the other side as well. So the first step in that process is identifying where is the lead. If you had pipes that are newer than late 70s, early 80s, you can be pretty sure that it was built without the lead. So any homes that are relatively new or in subdivisions that are relatively new, there's a low chance of having lead in the service line. But in older systems, older subdivisions, it's questionable on what the material is. So the most recent push from EPA is identify those. You have to figure out and list which houses have lead, which ones to not have lead, and which ones are unknowns. And then you have to slowly work through those unknowns and start identifying them as either lead or non-lead. And that's a huge challenge because we don't own those lines. A lot of them, the private lines, they're past the meter, and you're getting onto private property and asking those residents or businesses to help us to identify what they have. And in some cases, that means digging. It means potholing to physically look at the pipe that's underground and see what type of material it is. So we really need the help of our customer base in order to identify those, because sometimes you could go in a basement, look at a wall, see the incoming line, and have a pretty good idea of what the pipe's made of. In other cases, it might transition multiple times inside of a basement, or you can't get to where it comes into the house and you have to get into the yard. And we really need folks' help to identify what they can so that we don't end up having to dig any more than necessary.
Yeah, that was one of the things that I didn't even think about it, but I was talking to a customer, and that topic came up, and he's like, you guys just don't need to know what I have. And I explained to him, it's like, we don't really want to know. It's just we're being required by the EPA to do this. And I explained to him, and I said, eventually, if you're one of those homes that are statistically selected, we'll have to come and dig a pothole. And he's like, okay, I'm going home right now and complete that survey.
Yeah, no one wants you to dig up their yard, and we don't want to be digging up yards any more than we have to either. That's not our chosen path.
Well, and I think, and to speak, talking about with rates, I think it's I heard one of the consultants give an estimate. It's like $700 a pothole, I think, is what it's going to cost us for every one of those. And right now we're trying to narrow down, I think, 3,000 customers that are still unknown. So
a lot of money.
Yes. So we're working on it. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on today that you would like to address? I know you really want to be as transparent as possible, and hence the reason why you were so energetic to do this when I approached you about it. So thank you.
Well, I think it's important to point out that the authority is a group of people. It's not a government entity that just sits behind closed doors and makes decisions. We're very approachable. We very much want to be in touch with our customers. We want to help the community out, even the community that's not our customers. Our goal is to provide quality service to everyone. It's kind of our core value. And we take that seriously. We've got a great group of employees that really work hard to make sure that we are providing good customer service, good internal service, just a needed service to our community. And without those incredible employees and without having a good community that recognizes that work, it's hard to get that done. We've got a lot to do. The amount of replacement that needs to be done, I mentioned earlier, $600 million worth of pipe on an entity that has an annual budget of about $15 million. That's a big task. And so there's going to be a fair amount of work to get done in the future, but we've never shied away from a challenge. And again, with the staff that we've got, we know that we could get that accomplished. So I think it's a great entity. It's a great organization, and we've got a great community that we're able to serve.
Well, thank you again, Brian, for being so open to coming and doing this on short notice. And thanks to Swatch Media for hosting us on short notice. This all came together pretty quickly. And thank our audience for tuning in and whatever channel they may be watching us on. And again, if you appreciate more information like this and learning more about what the BRWA offers, we invite you to comment, to reach out to us through whatever social media channel you'd like. I manage all of those, or our team manages all of those. So we would love to hear from you and get back to you. And thanks again for your time.
Thank you.